Welcome to Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and seated next to me we have Professor Aubrey, and setting boundaries has always been kind of tough for me.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been tough for me as well. I think that we're both conflict avoiders,
Just a little bit.
a
Yeah.
small amount. And so, yeah, setting boundaries can lead to conflict.
It definitely can, which is always uncomfortable, but in any relationship that occurs, I've not heard of any relationship, especially the long-term ones, that didn't have some moments where people squabbled about something. That doesn't mean they were screaming at the top of their lungs or throwing the dishes or anything like that, but it was still what they would consider a squabble. And, parts of that is because of boundaries and not necessarily respecting them.
Hmm.
So, what we wanted to do this week is talk about an interesting article from our friends at Psychology Today called Avoid This Common Boundary Setting Mistake from Dr. Michelle McQuaid. Now, think about that name. That's like a good action name. It's like, it's Michelle McQuaid and she's here to kick ass. You know?
It is a very good action movie name.
Yeah, it's McQuaid Justice. That's right. Anyway, we're going to be talking about 6 steps to setting boundaries that stick, which, again, take the jokes out of the equation here, is definitely something I could do much better at myself. You said it yourself as well. And, even though articles like this are very much cursory introductions to this particular topic, you got to start somewhere.
There are many different ways to consider boundaries. And so this is just one person's take on it, right? There are lots of other people out there who have differing information.
And also, too, there are sources out there as well that talk about this very topic that go into much more detail than what this article does. But that doesn't mean it's a bad article. All right, so the article in question, you're going to find a link to it in our show description, so you'll be able to read the full article. As we mentioned, we're going to go through the bullet points here. So what we will have you do, Professor Aubrey, is start us off with number 1.
All right, here's number 1. Find your big why. Identify the deepest reason why you need a boundary and what it will change for the better to make it worth the risk. What are the benefits to be gained by setting your boundary? What are the costs of not asking for what you need? Can you roll the tape forward and see how these options play out? It's very important to know what you're looking for. So, for example, you might have a boundary that you're not going to be friends with people who use drugs. And you meet someone new, you like them, you're hanging out with them, and it becomes clear that they use drugs. You, if you have that as your boundary, it's not that the other person has to stop doing drugs. It's that you're going to stop hanging out with that person because that's what your boundary is. And so you have to think about why would that be beneficial to you as opposed to being risky. So it's going to be risky in that you're risking that person rejecting you, I guess. But the benefit would, protect you from your perceived risk of harm.
Well, I can actually correlate this to like my current employment situation. It's like if there was a situation to where I was offered like more responsibility in that place, I would have to really balance whether the skills that I have to offer are worth the mental health risks that will happen if I end up talking to people. Yeah, even though it's a doggy daycare, there is obviously a customer service element to it. So if like a supervisor position did magically open up at some point in time, I would have to be, and I were considered for that job. Let's put it that way. I mean, I'm probably patting myself on the back too hard. I may never have that opportunity present to me. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
it's, to me, it's like I get an anxiety attack just thinking about having a hard conversation with a dog parent about, hey, we can't have your dog back here anymore for X, Y, or Z, or, stuff happens with the dogs. Dogs can be dogs and they can fight. I would not want to have that conversation with a parent stating, your pride and joy, the animal you love is hurt.
Hmm.
That would, that would wreck me. And so it's like, if something like that were offered to me in the future, I would really have to balance out whether the downsides of it, and the downsides are what I said, are worth it. And I think, yeah, that's my example employment wise, but the other people can think of that too. Let's say you're offered a promotion at work, but you would go from working 8 hours a day to 12 hours a day. Would that be worth it? Some people can pull it off, some people can't. You have to think about that why. Because, yeah, like the employment example, I mean, there are going to be pros and cons to anything, I guess. But long term, yeah, you have to think about that why. Is it worth it? Why am I doing this?
Hmm. Absolutely. So once we've figured out our why, what's the number two here?
Define your boundary. Boundaries focus on what you will do to help your brain feel safe so you can remain open, curious, and caring with others. What is okay for you in this situation? What is not okay for you in this situation? How will you respond if the not okay things happen? Now, the example you brought up about somebody that does not want to associate with somebody doing drugs, there are plenty of reasons why people would do that, but one of them would be if the person in question who says they don't want to interact with people who do drugs used to take drugs themselves and
Sure.
don't want to do them again because they realize that if they were with people that did openly do drugs, that they may be tempted. And so, yeah, you have to be able to balance that because to your point, yeah, I mean, it's like you do want to try and be friends to people and not be rude, but how much should you expend if you are a person that does not want to hang with people that you use drugs? How much should you expend your personal time with someone that does?
Like I said before, it's sort of what it says. What is it okay for you in this situation, and what is not okay for you in this situation? So you could think of different scenarios where that'll come up and what your responses would be if you know that you have that boundary.
Yeah, I think that one was pretty straightforward there. So how about we dive into number 3?
Okay, number three, anticipate others' responses. Accept that other people may have all sorts of feelings about your boundary and that it is not your job to change or control their responses. Is there a visual mental image that can help you create a safe space to listen with acceptance about how others feel about your boundary? Can you use this image to help you discern what is true or not true about you or not about you about their response? That is difficult work to do, I think, in these instructions as given in this article are kind of difficult to follow.
Well, with you having read that, I did recall something that happened via a podcast a couple of months ago, and that was on Bill Maher's podcast when he had Steve-O from Jackass fame on the show. Now, Steve-O used to be a hardcore drug taker, but now he is clean and sober. And one little shtick that Bill Maher does on his podcast is that he smokes weed with his guest. But Steve-O came on and was like, "Hey, I'm sober. I don't want to get back on it. Can you please stop smoking that weed?" And Bill Maher essentially didn't.
Whoa.
Treated the situation like, "Hey, I'm a grown person. I can do what I want," type of deal. And yeah, that was a shitty situation that Bill Maher put Steve-O in. I mean, it's like, I don't think people should be ashamed for smoking weed in any way, shape, or form. I think it needs to be, decriminalized in this country because it is not the big boogeyman that it was presented to us when we were kids. But on the other side, if I, as a weed smoker, try to smoke weed around somebody that, does not want to smoke weed, has had a problem with smoking weed before, and has expressly said, I don't want to smoke weed, that makes me the asshole.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and that is more about them than it is about your boundary. Like, what does it say about Bill Maher that he kept doing that when someone requested that he stop?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was ever on pace to win like a Nobel Peace Prize or anything like that at any point. He's got quite the reputation, let's put it that way. But yeah, and I think too in Steve O's position, like if you are telling somebody to respect your boundary and they don't, it is a shitty feeling, but that doesn't mean you're wrong.
No.
Yeah,
And it doesn't mean that you can't maintain your boundary by leaving, right? If you're like, I have this boundary and someone disrespects it, you have to figure out what is it you're going to do about that.
which would mean anticipating it, and that ties into our next point.
Yes. Okay. Let's go to the next point.
All right, number 4, anticipate your reactions. Consider how you'd like to intentionally align your words and actions if someone finds your boundary hard to hear or accept. Is there a personal integrity word that can remind you who you want to be, e.g., courage? Is there a relational integrity word that can remind you of how you want to connect with others, e.g., kindness? You do want to be kind when setting a boundary. You do want to anticipate what the reactions are going to be, but I think in the example I gave with Steve O and Bill Maher, just you're gonna have people that will come back at you and challenge you on your boundary. Ideally, that would make you, as the person trying to set that boundary, think, should I have this person in my life? But it's something that you do. It's like you don't want to overdo it like I do in terms of trying to anticipate every single scenario you could ever encounter with somebody. That's
And use that for reasons not to connect with them.
yeah. Yeah, you want to. At times, you have to put your foot down if a boundary is being crossed. You could be nice to people. There have been a lot of times to where I've gritted my teeth because when somebody crossed over my boundaries and just didn't say anything until it became a bigger problem later on. And that's not good for you. That's not good for them. I mean, and it's like, yeah, if you go out of your way to at the moment you feel your boundaries being disrespected by telling the other person don't disrespect my boundaries, you could still have a negative thing happen. But especially in like relationships or whatever, people have the tendency to let the boundary pushing go on and on and on for days, weeks, months, years, and then boom.
Yep. There's no way to salvage that. People become so resentful of having their boundaries broken.
Yeah, but what you can do is covered in our next point. How about you dive into that?
Okay. So number 5 is create a self-soothing plan. If setting, communicating, or honoring your boundaries feels overwhelming, help yourself pause and reach for self compassion. Is there a reassuring movement you can do, e.g., hand on the heart, to help you remember that you're a good person facing a hard situation like all people have to? Or whatever is soothing to you, right? Like one of our jobs as people is to figure out what is it that we need in times of distress, because that's the thing, those are the things we need to give ourselves when we're in distress to soothe ourselves, like that we should be able to get through difficult moments by taking a breath, taking a step back, thinking about our goals, thinking about who we'd like to be, sort of all these types of things are can be soothing, and you just got to figure out how to do that.
I mean,
And no, drinking is not a good one.
what? Oh,
Doing drugs is not a good one.
oh.
The reckless behavior is not are not good.
Then what's the point?
Self-soothing.
Then what's the point, right? Right. I mean, yeah. Yeah, you got to be responsible. You got to be healthy. And yeah, you do want to respect yourself by honoring the boundaries that you have that you don't want crossed. It's like, yeah, you on the one hand, you don't want to be a dick. You don't want to be like the a vegan person, and this is just a classic stereotype here, but a vegan person that would go into a non-vegan person's home and criticize all their food choices or go out of their way to, say, you're not going to feed me that. I mean, ideally, your friend would already know you're vegan and have other options already there for you. But, do you get my point?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be a dick about it, but again, you do want to respect yourself and your boundaries. So yeah, do something to take that breather to just remind yourself that you're doing the right thing for yourself. All right.
All right, number 6.
Number 6, say it and follow through. Don't apologize or over explain your boundaries to others. When required, just ask for what you need and take responsibility for following through. What's a short, kind, and clear way to share with others what is okay, what isn't okay, and what you will do if the not okay thing happens in the future? Yeah, I mean, I get that point. You don't want to have a 12-hour monologue, a 12-hour, you know what I mean? Just a really long monologue detailing, why you don't want a certain boundary to be crossed. It would just be a simple matter of like, if you have a coworker that does drugs, invite you to some place after work to hang out and have fun, and drugs will be there, you can just say, like I don't want to be around drugs, so I'm sorry, I'm not able to go. Simple as that.
Yeah,
I mean, that does, I think, respect the other person as well, because, you don't have to be a drug user to still say another consenting adult has the ability to decide for themselves what chemicals go in and out of their body.
sure.
You just don't have to participate.
Exactly.
Yep. Do you have any thoughts?
I think thinking through what that pithy, short thing that you're going to say to people who want to know what your boundary is or what's going to happen if the boundary is broken, and you want to be able to communicate really clearly but really quickly. I think that can be difficult and definitely worth thinking through beforehand. Like if you're going into a situation where you know that your boundary is going to be implicated, how can you, with compassion for other people that you're talking to, assert what your boundary is in a matter of fact way and explain what will happen if the boundary is broken?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know this would be a pegging party. I'm allergic. I gotta go.
Something like that.
Yeah, setting boundaries is hard. Keeping those boundaries is hard. You're a work in progress as a human being. We all are. It just is just a matter of continuing to fight for them. Respect yourself, respect the boundaries that you do have, and give people leeway. But at the end of the day, if somebody is crossing your boundary, whether it be in a romantic situation, a friendship situation, a work situation, anything like that, you have to say something. So think about it. Think about the words that will come out of your mouth. Make it the type of words that you would want to hear if the roles were reversed.
Yes. And that you don't care who would be there for you to say them. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Exactly.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Dylan.
And I'm Cameron.
And we're the hosts of Barstool Film School, a conversational comedy podcast about the very best bar movies. You know, the ones that are like perfect to watch when you're hanging out in a bar with friends. Now, I'm a writer and a film school washout.
And I'm a bar owner.
So we ought to know what we're talking about.
You would hope.
Tune in every other week, wherever you get your pods, as we take on a new flick.
And we will pair those flicks with some cocktails.
To see if they pass the bar. Now, what do you say, Cam? Shall we pour ourselves another round?
Let's do it.
All right.
All right, welcome back. Before we wrap up here, we wanted to talk about a series of TV shows that we've been watching with one Mr. Conan O'Brien, Conan Without Borders, and Conan O'Brien Must Go.
That's right. I don't know much about these shows, but Conan Must Go, it seems like an older series than... No.
No, the Must Go is the newer show. The Conan Without Borders occurred when he still had his talk show on TBS.
Oh, interesting. It's the opposite of what I thought.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, though, it's the same format. It's just in the Conan Without Borders, he's still interacting on occasion with a studio audience in California, whereas the Conan Must Go show is strictly about, his podcast and meeting up with fans and then going to where they're at to interact with the locals. But overall, it's an interesting experiment. I'll put it that way. Because on the good side, I feel he does a lot to be the self-deprecating American to be made fun of by these people in the various countries that he goes. Because for all the good that we do have a pretty bad reputation at times too. And I think, the fact that he can go over and be the American that people can laugh at and whatever, I think, in a way, is a good thing. I think the big critique we've both had about the show is that, based on the locations where he goes, there are some countries like Israel, for instance, which have a lot of political strife happening. And it can be a little obnoxious to hear the guy that brought us Triumph the Incel Comic Dog and the Masturbating Bear talking to us about, what happens in Israel and Palestine and talking about the political conflict there.
Korea and North Korea, or Cuba and the United States. Like, he picks these really hot button places to go, and he gets a little too into the politics of things, or the trying to. I mean, he basically throws up his hands and says, "I'm ignorant, so I can't be held responsible for my actions." Seems to me. And then he goes and causes problems.
You were angry at him?
I just don't like, I like the show because it's funny. His interactions with people, no matter who they are, would be funny. Like, he doesn't have to go around the world to be funny in those ways that he's funny. But yeah, I don't think he should be going to the demilitarized zone in Korea and joking around in the building where the only communication between those two countries occurs.
Yeah, you can't make comedy out of that. It was a rather uncomfortable part of that particular episode when they were in Korea. We did end up fast forwarding through that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it's. I kind of get the idea behind why he wanted to do it, just as a way to show the American audience what it's like overseas as well. In some of these places that most of us are not going to be able to get a chance to go to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think, Conan O'Brien talking about the political stuff in a serious voice, just, it didn't hit. It's like he was trying to do something good, but oftentimes when you do that in the form of entertainment, it can come off as lecturing. And again, I don't need the guy who gave us Triumph the Insult Comic Dog and the Masturbating Bear lecturing me about politics.
Well, and like what he did in the Israel episode was talked to people and allowed people to speak on camera from the Palestinian side of the conflict, but he didn't do the same with the Israeli side of the conflict. And in recognizing that, he just says on the TV show, we just want to point out that we didn't hear from the other side of these arguments. Which, fine, that's a proviso, right? It's a limitation. But why should you do that? Why should you give one side airtime and then just say, we realize we didn't give the other side airtime?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't his best episode. Now, we did talk, and I think we both said the episode where he went to Haiti was actually one of the better ones.
Yes.
That seemed like he was able to walk that tightrope of being able to talk about the situation there. But I think the spirit that he went to Haiti for, because he went, I guess a week after it came out that, who said some bad stuff about Haiti, calling it a shithole or something. So he immediately got a camera crew and went to Haiti himself to record what he did. And a lot of it was just him allowing the Haitian people to tell Trump to fuck off.
Yeah.
Which very much deserved. But it's definitely a mixed bag, but you will get laughs out of it.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said again and again and again, like, if you're going to walk that tightrope, you have to be able to know you're going to pull it off. It's like that's why we don't often talk about super hardcore, intense topics on this show, because I don't want. It's like if I'm going to talk about an important topic like that, I want to do it right, and I don't want to be the one person that ends up being the bad example of somebody following a good cause.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is what it is, but man, Conan O'Brien is one of the people that helped change comedy in the United States.
In what way?
Well, he started off writing in television. Do you remember that HBO show, Not Necessarily the News?
No.
He was a writer on that with his writing partner, Greg Daniels, who I believe went on to create The Office.
Greg Daniels, that sounds very familiar as related to sitcoms. I was going to say, too, this show, there's a show called, with Carl Pilkington, called Idiot Abroad. And it is him going to various places and having various experiences. And he was able to do that and go to some very fraught places without getting involved in politics at all. And I think that Conan could take a take a page, if you will, from that show, which it feels like he did. Like I need to figure out which one came out first because they are very similar. Conan is intentionally funny. Carl is accidentally funny, but they're both funny.
Yeah. Yeah, he also Conan O'Brien also wrote for The Simpsons. He's actually the writer that helped change The Simpsons from an animated family sitcom to the wacky zany stuff that you see. Like the first episode that he wrote that kind of broke boundaries in terms of some of the abstract stuff that they do on that show was Marge versus the Monorail.
Oh, monorail.
Yeah, yeah,
Monorail.
he wrote that episode, and again, that episode was the genesis of The Simpsons doing wacky stuff. Because, like at the end of it, like Leonard Nimoy, dematerializes like he was beamed out, which can't happen in real life, of course. And if you would watch previous episodes in previous seasons of The Simpsons up to that point, you wouldn't have seen that because it was still portrayed as just again a regular sitcom but animated.
Mm-hmm.
But he was able to change it that way, and also Selma's lizard Jub Jub. Jub Jub was a name he would give people when that he was writing the show. Hey, Jub Jub, give me that. Jub Jub, give me that.
Oh, uh-huh.
So there's that. Of course, he replaced David Letterman on Late Night.
Right.
And like when he first came on the show, I swore I would never watch it. Like I was the type of ignorant person that was be like, I hate Conan O'Brien, and then put on a tape of Marge versus the Monorail, not realizing that he was the person behind it. But again, I gave the show time, and then Triumph the Insult Comic Dog came, and like, how could you not love that character?
Well, how could you not love that character?
Oh man, I had a great time the other day at work singing the Triumph song "Cats Are Cunts" with the dogs at work. you know,
Yeah.
yeah. And Conan briefly took over the Tonight Show, but Jay Leno, being a douchebag, ended up causing that stint to be short-lived. And then that's when I saw Conan O'Brien live
Wow.
in 2010. Yes,
Where was that?
in Sacramento.
Mm.
Actually ended up gaining floor seats, and then at the end of the show, Conan came out and did a song. It was On the Road Again, but he added some different lyrics to it, like "My Own Show Again." I can't wait to get my own show again. And then afterwards, he ran out into the audience, and then I was able to pat him on his right shoulder as he ran by me with his guitar.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So, and then of course he went to TBS and everything like that, and then these shows came about. But he's been one of those people that have been kind of plugging away and helping change American comedy for the better and for the weirder in a lot of ways.
Well, that's cool. I didn't really know that.
Yeah, the more you know, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever paid that much attention to Conan O'Brien. Like, I just assumed that I would not like him.
I didn't I don't think I would picture you as somebody in your 20s that would be up at 12:30 at night watching a talk show, though.
No.
Yeah, I mean, so that would, yeah, I don't. So in that case, I don't think any host, whether it be Letterman, Leno, or whoever, you would have been terribly interested in because, I mean, talk shows were technically dying in the '90s anyway, and they're getting close to dying now.
Yeah.
Just entertainment's changing. It is weird how time will just be cruel to a form of entertainment that you love. Because it makes it obsolete.
Yeah, or it just doesn't play well. Like old sitcoms, man. Ooh.
Yeah, a majority of them. I mean, obviously, there are some gems here and there, but even with old sitcoms that I like the Dick Van Dyke Show, I'm not going to go back and have a marathon, watching old episodes of the Dick Van Dyke Show. You know what I mean?
Why not?
Just, it's like, it's funny, but that 60s type of humor is still tame, even though that show is much better written than other shows in that era.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I want something a little more raunchy. Just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of raunchy, we got a new Instagram account for the Friends Talking Nerdy Pets.
That's right. The Friends Talking Nerdy Pets.
Yes, at FTN Pets on Instagram as well as Threads. You're going to get lots of pictures of Annie and Mimsy, but we also did want to put it out there to you, our friends at home. If you want your lovely pet to be featured on that Instagram post as well, we'd love to do that because
any pet of yours is a pet of ours.
Damn right. Damn right. It's a way to show love for the animals in your life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like back when you were in high school, maybe middle school, maybe elementary school, when you could get a Valentine delivered to someone during the school day. Did you have a club that did this at your school?
No, we did the whole, because for the era that I did that in, I was in that private elementary school. And what we ended up doing was that little like paper box that you would tape on the side of your desk and then people would pop stuff into it. And it was always uncomfortable too because the way that school ended up doing it and made people do it, you essentially had to make a Valentine for everybody. So there was no Ralph Wiggum situation, but you still knew that this girl Katie doesn't give a fuck about me, but here's this, like it was still awkward.
Yeah, it's very awkward.
Yeah, nobody chose me for real.
Yeah, but like this was in high school when like it was like the Debs or some kind of club and it was a fundraiser. And if you paid like $5 or whatever, they'd take a red rose and whatever your message was and deliver it. And so all these people, right, are getting roses and messages and all this shit and other people aren't. It just like sets up this really terrible day for most people.
Yeah, luckily, if I was at a school, like a high school that did that, I was one of the people that was passed up. But I also don't think I was at a school that did that. So thank goodness for me. Chalk one up for old Tim. Because, but on the other hand, too, like, thank goodness that didn't happen. Like, I wouldn't want to watch, like, it's a rose. And then somebody writing down, like, lyrics from, like, a Bryan Adams song, thinking that they're, edgy and cool.
What about a Poison song?
Poison, oh, yes. Nothing but a good time, my love. No, also, too, I think, like, if it was for my sister, she actually liked that group White Lion.
White Lion? I've never heard of White Lion.
Yeah, I only remember like one hit that they did. They were one of the hair metal bands that mainly did ballads. And so that's what did it for my sister. And the guy had like long blonde hair and he was all dialed up and everything. And like my sister was like, oh, that's a good song. It's like, yeah, you're listening to the song. Wink.
Well,
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, right? And you can like what you like. I mean, there are plenty of things I liked in that era that I'm embarrassed by now.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I had good taste from the beginning, but
My tastes have evolved over time because there was, I mean, I've said it on the show before too. Like, I've seen Kid Rock in concert, so I had that era.
yeah, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, Kid Rock, really?
Yeah, the 2000 Kid Rock, though, the one who still was drinking and smoking weed and hanging out with transvestites and all that. Trans people, sorry. Hanging out with trans people. Um, yeah, the complete, total. Well, he was the same though. Like that's the thing about Kid Rock that you find out like after the fact. Like he's always been a phony.
Uh-huh.
Just he wants to act like he's this, from the streets, lived in a trailer park type of person. Like he grew up in upper middle class, like Rochester, Michigan. Like his dad worked in the auto industry, I believe, or something like that. He lived on like 2 or 3 acres. You're rich if you live on acres of land.
Yeah.
And not in a building or whatever. And, like he had his early career before he hit it big in the late 90s. In the early 90s, he even was a white guy that tried to have like I think they call it a fade, a type of the African American hairstyle with like the hairs raised up, like Kid and Play. Do you remember the one with the big hair? Something similar to that. But it's like, you're Kid Rock. What the fuck are you doing? But just just a parasite who gloms on. Is like, I like this stuff, so like me too. Yay. Yeah, nothing good about it. Like, and I'm not saying it because he has, different political beliefs than me. I've been open about the fact that there are some Ted Nugent songs that I like, and I vehemently disagree with 99.9% of his views, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. We all have our bad music histories. Like, Right Said Fred, remember them?
Yeah.
I'm Too Sexy.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a fun song, but the second one I thought was amazing, and it didn't go anywhere.
What was it?
I knew you would say that.
Was it their second hit of their, but they only got one?
They tried for a second one.
Did not work out. I know that much.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
Anyway, any last words? I stumped you there.
Well, last words. My last words are, I hope that everybody feels like they can set the boundaries they need to set in their lives and that people will respect them.
Damn right. And don't give up on your boundaries, people. Respect your boundaries, respect yourself. And you can do that by still respecting other people too.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, for Professor Aubrey, each Monday we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
So long.
You're invading my boundary right now.
Get out of here.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
On YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.